Zackary Schilling, Zackary Schilling, Schilling.
May I proceed? Thank you. Sir, do you know someone by the name of Robert Tellis?
I do.
When did you first meet Mr. Tellis?
2020.
Okay. Do you see Mr. Tellis here in the courtroom?
I do.
Why don't you point out where he's sitting, maybe describe an article of clothing that he's wearing?
He's got a blue suit on, sitting right over there, bald head.
Okay. Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant. So in what context do you meet the defendant?
2020, I'm a real estate agent, and I started working with Robert shortly after I believe he was elected to his position, helping to sell probate houses.
Okay. So he was the public administrator when you first met him?
Yes.
Do you have a business partner?
Yes, I do.
What is her name?
His name, Bob McMasters.
Okay. Did you have another partner that you worked with?
Oh, yeah, Kristen Riffle. That's my real partner, yeah.
Okay. So that was
well, I guess when you asked me that, that's how I met Bob, through Bob.
Okay. But the one that you work with, even still today, is Kristen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you would help sell homes through the public administrator. Is that right?
That is correct.
Just briefly, what's that kind of concept? So someone passes away and they don't have a will, and then there's a home left behind. Is that kind of how?
That's correct. And there's typically there's not a family per se, or the family is distant. That's when the public administration office steps in and helps with the estate.
Okay. So if you were tasked to help the public administrator's office I don't know, get a home fixed up or resell it, would you have interactions with Mr. Tellis?
Yes.
Would you see him in person?
Yes.
Describe typically something you might do in person with Mr. Tellis.
Well, typically we would, when the house was assigned, we'd walk through the house and say, this is what needs to be taken care of, this is what we're getting rid of. And then typically after the house was finished and completed, we would meet, look at the house. Rob would give us a thumbs up. We then would go over comps. During that process, we would talk about the value, and typically then the listing agreement would be signed either in person or through DocuSign.
So when you're saying you would do a walkthrough, who would typically be there at a walkthrough?
Typically, it would be myself, Robert Tellis, Roberta, Bob McMasters, and Raul, who was the general contractor, who wasn't a general contractor.
And Roberta, meaning Roberta Kennett?
Yes.
All right. So when you would do a walkthrough...
Well, but if I may,
sure.
If there was another somebody in the same position as Roberta, would be whoever was in charge of the file under Robert would be there.
Understood. But when you say walkthrough, you're literally walking through with Mr. Tellis?
That's correct.
So you get to see him literally walk?
Yes.
How long would a walkthrough typically take?
We could be there a half hour to an hour, or sometimes he could be in and out of there in 10, 15 minutes.
All right. On average, how many times a month would you be doing walkthroughs with Mr. Tellis?
Well, I would say that on average from 2020 to 2022, I'd see Mr. Tellis probably 1 to 3 times a month at least.
Okay, doing things like you've just described to us.
Yeah, especially during the heat of it, yes.
And the heat of being what?
Heat of when we were really turning houses for him.
Understood. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned 2020 to 2022, is that right?
Yes.
It's about 3 years, roughly, or a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. At some point I want to turn your attention to September, very early September of 2022. Do you become aware of a journalist, Jeffery German, passing away?
Yes.
I don't want to get into the substance of it, but like, how do you learn about it in general?
I saw how I learned that he died was, a picture on the news. Then shortly after that, I think there was police video or police photos that were released of the suspected person that had done that.
Okay, so bottom line is, at first you see through the news, it's just kind of reporting what happened. It was a fairly big story. Would that be fair? Okay, at least locally, it's a big story. And then you mentioned something else. You said that the police released what?
The police released photos of who they suspected perhaps might be the person responsible for.
Do you remember kind of generally like what the outfit was? What do you remember?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what do you remember?
It was a sombrero, a flame construction vest, I think long sleeve shirt. The shoes were some Nikes.
Okay.
The Nikes like you find like at Marshalls or Ross.
Okay. So you mentioned those Nikes. So when you see those images first released of the suspect walking around, does that catch your attention?
Yes.
Why?
It does. With the way that, I mean, just in the photos itself, and the likeliness of the photos and of Mr. Tellis were really, really close.
Is it just photos, or is there a video that you're seeing this person walk? In the videos released by the police, did you see the videos too?
Yes.
So you see this suspect walking. What are you thinking at that point?
That was on a Friday.
Okay.
And I'm like, boy, that really, it's like, boy, that really looks like somebody I know.
Okay, and who is the person you're thinking of?
I was thinking of Mr. Tellis.
Okay, was there anything else aside from the walk that caught your attention? When you looked at the videos of that person.
The gait and Mr. Tellis would always wear a certain kind of Nike that was very unique to me.
Okay, so
maybe I'm a little bit fashionista, but like the Nikes that you would find like at Marshalls or Ross, where they replaced the leather with like a plastic almost, and the hard plastic. They're cheap Nikes you always wore. I don't know.
So when you saw the video, the guys you described in the sombrero and the construction and the orange construction outfit, you thought the shoes reminded you of the shoes that Robert Tellis wore.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And the gait.
Yeah, and the way that he walked, the way that he carried, the way that it was carried.
So when you see this, do you like share these thoughts with anyone?
Well, with my partner Christy, I'm like, holy crap! Both of us agreed that really looked like Rob Tellis. But to jump to a conclusion like that about somebody, you have to be pretty sure of yourself.
And let me ask you this: did you kind of follow or know about any articles that Mr. German had written about Mr. Tellis?
Oh yeah, I was very familiar.
I don't want to get into the substance of it, but you were aware of kind of that leading up to this moment.
Yeah, I was very familiar with what was going on.
Okay, so on that Friday, you see that, you talk to Kristen. Do you pick up the phone and call the police at that point?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so I want to flash forward a few days later. Do you see something else in the media that catches your attention?
Yeah, I was on Monday. The Reno Gazette released photos of who, again, they believed was responsible for Mr. German's death's car.
Okay, car. What is it about the car that caught your attention?
That it was Rob Tellis's car, maroon, Tahoe, Denali, whatever, older version, silver rims.
Had you ever seen Mr. Tellis drive this maroon?
Absolutely.
When? Where?
Well, Robert Tellis and I live close to each other. So.
In what part of town?
I live in Summerlin Center, and he lives in Coley Ranch.
Okay. So, I didn't mean to cut you off. Tell us what you were going to say.
Well, in fact, is there was one instance where Robert Tellis and I both went and go to the same water store on Sahara and Fort Apache.
Okay.
And we were in the store together. We walked out kind of together. He loaded his water into the back of a maroon Denali Tahoe, whatever it is, maroon with silver rims.
Okay.
Which is when the pictures came up from the Reno Gazette. I called Christy and I was like, and there's like just came down my spine. I was like, holy crap! I didn't want to believe it, but the facts are the facts that was Rob Tellis's car.
Okay, so you share that with Christy. What's her kind of reaction to what you're saying?
She's like, you need to call.
Objection, hearsay.
May I be heard? I mean, I can approach her. We can approach. share your thoughts with Kristen, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have a conversation with her, right?
Mhm.
And after speaking with Kristen, what do you decide to do?
I called Crime Stoppers, and the phone did not, it wouldn't go through. There was a secondary phone call that was suggested, phone number. I believe it was on the news, and so it would turn into a counterintelligence, whatever, terrorist thing, and they were covering those phone calls after the photos were released. And I spoke to someone on the phone for about 15, 20 minutes, and they said, please stay by your phone. The detectives are going to want to talk to you. I didn't hear from the detectives, but the following morning, that's when Robert Tellis's house was raided, and he was brought into custody.
Okay. And then a few weeks later, let's say approximately on September 26th of 2022, do you ultimately sit down and do an interview with the police?
Yeah, the detectives come to my office and talk to me.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Schilling, was it just your testimony that you saw this image on the TV on a Friday?
Yes, it was a Friday. It's been a little while, but that's when I saw it first, because I thought it was through the whole weekend that it was like, no, this can't be.
Okay, so it's your testimony then on a Friday you saw this on TV, and that's when you...
The photos of the suspected, yes.
I see. You'd had a business relationship with Mr. Tellis previously, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And you guys had a break, fair to say?
A break?
Yeah, the business relationship ended.
No.
I see. So you were still in business with Mr. Tellis?
That's correct. We just did a couple weeks before, just had finished revamping a house for him. Okay. Independent of my former partner at the probate department, Bob McMaster.
And is it your testimony then that there had been not an issue concerning the percentages that were being charged to the estate or to the homes, concerning the homes to be sold?
Was there a concern?
Yes.
No. Well, I mean, there at one point, long before this, probably a year and a half before, Robert and I had a disagreement about the commission when he overspent on a house, having it revamped, where I told him the value was much lower, and he believed because of Zello that it was higher. But that's not really relevant to what...
Well, I submit it is. I mean, so he was trying to preserve money to the heirs from the sale of the home, correct?
Well, in that particular case that you're bringing up,
yes.
He actually went opposite of what my advice was and spent entirely way too much money with Bob McMaster's revamping that house. And my comps I didn't agree with the comps that they were trying to push the value on. And it turned out that my value was correct. And because of that, and because of what they overspent on revamping that house, he then came to me and said, you need to take a commission break, which I pushed back, but ultimately I did do.
So then there was an issue. He wanted you to lower your commission in order for the heirs to receive more money, correct?
Yes, but after that fact, there was
Sure.
still, we probably did 20 or 30 other houses after that.
So you guys did have a dispute. He was trying to say, you're getting too much money. I want to preserve that money to the heirs, correct?
In one instance out of about 40 houses, sure.
Okay, now it's 40 houses.
Well, whatever we did, I don't know the exact number of offhand. I think it was probably about 32 houses that I went through the probate department with, but I could be wrong, so don't nail me to the cross on that, but that's about right.
Nail you to the cross. I mean, you're coming in here, you're basically some expert on some gate that you see on TV. You just know it's Robert Tellis, correct? That's your testimony. You reach out and you call Crime Stoppers, correct?
That's correct.
What date did you call Crime Stoppers?
On the Monday.
What's the date? Do you recall?
No, I don't.
You were interviewed on the 28th of September, correct?
That's correct.
Or in the States, it's the 26th of August.
I'm sorry, it's the
26th.
The 26th, correct?
You have it in front of you.
Yes. And during this interview, you talk about a friend of yours that's on SWAT that raided Mr. Tellis's house, correct?
That is correct.
He told you about the raiding of Mr. Tellis's house, correct?
Yes,
And you were friends, correct?
I grew up with him.
And then you decide that you want to give testimony that hurts Mr. Tellis, correct? You want to talk to the police and say that you... I think it's fair. You're then interviewed by police, correct? And you give testimony or you give a statement that could be easily read as hurtful to Mr. Tellis, correct?
That's your interpretation.
So saying he's the guy that murdered Jeff Tellis, that's not hurtful? My interpretation?
That's a fact.
I see. So you're calling and saying, I see something. I think this is Robert Tellis. That's not hurtful? Or is that hurtful?
It was my.
It's argumentative, Your Honor.
You can answer. Go ahead.
I have no malice against Robert Tellis.
I see. But you had some issues with him concerning your percentage and us being cut, correct?
One has nothing to do with the other.
And you talked to your friend, good friend of yours from high school that was on SWAT, involved in this investigation, correct?
Yes,
And then you give a statement to police concerning Mr. Tellis. Fair enough?
that's fair, but one has nothing to do with the other.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Just real briefly.